All right, a point of personal privilege here. Over the course of my life, I have come into contact with the Secret Service and the Capitol Police in Washington, D.C. They do an impossible balancing act, protecting our leaders while at the same time protecting our freedom to protest those leaders. Every time I've had to deal with the Secret Service or the Capitol Police, I have found them to be respectful, even having a sense of humor, and doing the best they can to protect all of us, including our freedoms. Today, according to reports, one of those Secret Service agents saved Donald Trump's life. This could have been a horrible morning. So this is one American who just wants to say to the Secret Service, thank you. And to the American people, let's get rid of these guns to make the job of our Secret Service agents easier. Well, here is the latest regarding yet another assassination attempt on the life of former President Donald Trump. This one down in Florida. No shots were fired at Donald Trump, but Secret Service agents fired shots at a man who is now in custody and is expected to be charged with attempting to assassinate Donald Trump. Axios reports this morning that the suspect's Twitter account has been taken down, but before it was taken down, Axios determined he voted for Donald Trump in 2016. Axios reports that in 2020, the suspect promoted Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy running together on a dream Republican ticket instead of Donald Trump. There are reports that the suspect's social media shows in 2020 he supported then Democrat Tulsi Gabbard for president. Gabbard has since joined the Trump campaign team. There are reports the suspect is also a registered Democrat who made several donations to Act Blue, a clearinghouse for Democratic candidates. The BBC reports this morning that there are also pro-Palestinian, pro-Taiwan, and anti-China message on the suspect's social media profile, including accusations against China for conducting, quote-unquote, biological warfare and weaponizing COVID. Why is that relative? Why is that relevant? Because in the next couple of hours, you will hear J.D. Vance, Republicans, and of course Donald Trump accuse the Democrats of inciting this attempt on Donald Trump's life. During last Tuesday's debate, you might recall that Donald Trump accused the Democrats of inciting the previous assassination attempt with their rhetoric. He said, quote, I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me, unquote. J.D. Vance, immediately after the assassination attempt back in July, blamed the Democratic Party's heated rhetoric. It didn't matter that the shooter was reportedly a Trump supporter. And of course, when you bring up renewing the assault weapons ban, which Joe Biden did immediately after the July shooting, Republicans said now is not the time to politicize an assassination attempt. That's how Republicans frame the ground rules after an assassination attempt. It's perfectly okay for them to say it happened because Democrats won't stop verbally assaulting Donald Trump. That's okay for Republicans to politicize an assassination attempt. But when Joe Biden says the attempt on Donald Trump's life makes it startlingly clear that we need to get these weapons of war off our streets, Republicans say he's guilty of using the attempt on Donald Trump for political purposes. Donald Trump is reported to have told Fox News that a Secret Service agent fired 4 shots at a man pointing an assault rifle at the former president on the fifth hole of his golf course as Trump was just about to putt. Sean Hannity of Fox News spoke with Trump and then reported the suspect was holding an AK-47, but it doesn't seem to be true. Hannity seems to have gotten that wrong. It was not an AK-47. I'll have more about that in a second. NBC News reports this morning that the suspect was once arrested and convicted for possessing a machine gun. A machine gun, I believe machine guns have been against the law for almost a century, since the 1930s. NBC says there's no record that he did any prison time for possessing that machine gun or did any prison time for the nearly 100 other criminal counts filed against him in North Carolina alone. Agents say that after firing at the suspect, Trump, I'm reporting what Trump said. He says that after the agents fired at the suspect, they immediately jumped on top of him, pulled Trump into a steel-reinforced car, and sped off. So this is what we know. Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw said Sunday they have arrested a suspect believed to have been planning to assassinate Donald Trump while the Republican nominee for president was playing at the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida. This was not Mar-a-Lago. The suspect is expected to be arraigned later this morning. Police say at roughly 1:30 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, a Secret Service agent fired at the suspect after the agent noticed the muzzle of an AK-47 style rifle poking through the chain link fence surrounding the golf course as Trump was playing. As I said earlier, Trump was immediately hustled off the green and placed in a secure location. No shots were fired at Trump. Again, no shots were ever fired at Trump. Police say the sniper was not hit by the Secret Service agent's bullets, but as the suspect fled, he left behind an AK-47 styled rifle, a GoPro camera supposedly to record the shooting, and 2 bags. The Washington Post reports this morning that the weapon found at the scene has been misidentified as an AK-47. Instead, munitions experts tell the Post it's an SKS-type rifle that has been retrofitted with an AK magazine for 7.62 millimeter cartridges that rely on a similar gas system to release the bullets in rapid fire. Florida has some of the laxest gun laws in America. As of July 2023, Florida residents no longer need a permit, background check, or safety training in order to carry or travel with a concealed, fully loaded weapon. The quality of Secret Service protection for Trump is once again being called into question. Trump, no longer in office, is not entitled to full Secret Service protection, according to Secret Service policy and budgeting. He's not entitled to the same full Secret Service protection he enjoyed as Commander-in-Chief. Maybe if he and the Republicans had stopped taking money from the NRA and the gun manufacturers and instead renewed the assault weapons ban back when Trump was president, there wouldn't be any need for increased Secret Service protection right now. I'm just asking questions. No politician in American history has ever taken more money from the National Rifle Association than Donald Trump. It could be as high as $40 million from the NRA, which some believe was actually Russian money. It is believed by some that Vladimir Putin used the NRA as a straw donor to get $40 million to Donald Trump in 2016. So it should give pause and make Trump wonder if maybe flooding these assault weapons into the marketplace, while profitable for your donors, might make him and us less safe. Maybe. I'm just asking questions. Every time there's an assassination attempt or a shooting of a government official, we are told to curb our speech, to tone down the heated political rhetoric, as though the words we use are more lethal than bullets. Because Republicans, because they would rather see more and more weapons sold, our freedom of speech must be curtailed so that gun manufacturers can sell more weapons. According to Republicans, Americans should be free to buy as many assault weapons as they want, but we need to control what we say because guns don't kill, words do. Republicans are constantly bemoaning the cancel culture, wanting to silence them. They're always complaining the cancel culture won't let us exercise our First Amendment rights. But we see every time there's a tragedy involving guns, it's the Republicans blaming speech and never the millions upon millions of dollars donated to Republican politicians who in turn prevent Congress from passing the assault weapons ban. Now, I do agree with Republicans when they complain Secret Service protection isn't sufficient right now for Donald Trump. I'm not criticizing the Secret Service. They've done a great job. Thank you. They do a great job. But they're understaffed because former presidents don't get the same protection as presidents do. It's almost as unsafe right now to run for office as it is for our kids to sit in a classroom. And we should probably do something about that. I don't know, maybe arm the candidates. That seems to be what the Republicans think our schools should do, arm the teachers. Maybe we should arm the candidates. Why are these candidates going out in public without caring? I'm just throwing out a suggestion. Maybe the wives or the children of the candidates who are standing on stage next to them, maybe they should be trained to fire back because, you know, good guy with a gun and whatnot. But I do believe Trump, in all seriousness, should be given full protection right now as though he's president for many reasons. And I doubt anybody disagrees with me about this. He should have almost as much protection as Joe Biden in the final 2 months, less than 2 months of this election. Had Trump been president, that entire golf course would have been sealed off, and there would have been way more Secret Service agents on the scene. Again, I think with fewer than 2 months left before this election, they should give Trump the protection we're giving Joe Biden right now and the protection that we gave Donald Trump when he was president. I do mean that. This is getting really serious. And if I were Joe Biden, I would just say spend the money, give Trump more Secret Service protection. The last thing we need is a repeat of what happened in Pennsylvania 2 months ago, or God forbid, something far worse. You know what I think about Donald Trump, but I want him defeated at the ballot box and only at the ballot box. There's no other way to stop Donald Trump. We have to vote for Kamala Harris. So let's make sure Trump has all the Secret Service protection he needs and then some. And again, I'm not sure how it works with Secret Service protection. But if I were Joe Biden, if I were Kamala Harris, if I were the Democratic Party, I would make sure this government is spending whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump safe. Again, I don't know what it takes to keep Trump as safe as Biden or as safe as Trump was kept when he was president. I would assume it costs a lot of money. Let's spend that money. At the same time, we should remind Republicans and voters of how much it costs to keep Donald Trump safe, and remind everyone, and especially the Republican Party, of the billions of dollars assault weapons cost Americans each year in extra security, lost productivity, and of course, medical bills. Yes, medical bills. Health Affairs Journal estimated that gunshot wounds cost anywhere between $5,000 to $100,000 each. They came up with that figure after 500 people were shot back in 2017 at a concert in Las Vegas. Health Affairs Journal looked at the medical bills from that shooting and saw the patients in Las Vegas were charged anywhere between $5,000 and $100,000 for each wound. Now, I'm going to assume that was a volume discount. 500 people shot. There's an economy of scale. You're already set up to handle the victims flooding the emergency room. It's an assembly line. I'm going to assume mass shootings cost way less than when just one person is shot at, say, 3 a.m, and the surgeon has to get out of bed and they have to set up the operating theater. A one-off is way more expensive than a mass shooting. And there is the conversation we will be having in America. It won't be about getting rid of assault weapons. It's going to be, why is it so expensive to treat gunshot wounds? How do we bring down the cost of treating gunshot wounds? For the record, yesterday, according to all reports, it now looks like a good guy with a gun stopped a bad guy with a gun. This could have been, it's chilling to imagine what this morning could have been like. A good guy with a gun stopped a bad guy with a gun, but the good guy didn't take him out. The bad guy, according to all reports, got away. The Secret Service has undoubtedly the best sharpshooters in the world. And even the best sharpshooter in the world couldn't land a kill shot on yesterday's assassin. The assassin, or wannabe assassin, got away. And who knows what kind of damage he could have committed had he brought his weapon with him. But let's pause for a second and remember once again how close we came. And let's remember once again, it was the Secret Service that kept Donald Trump safe. And let's remember how sick this all seems to the rest of the world. Congresswoman Elise Stefanic, part of the Republican House leadership and one of Trump's biggest supporters, said on Sunday she is demanding answers. She wants answers as to why a shooter was once again able to get this close to Donald Trump. Stefanic, by the way, is married to Matthew Manda. He's a sweet guy. He's the manager of public affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation based in Newtown, Connecticut. And they assist makers of assault weapons in finding untapped markets to sell weapons in. I've seen video testimonials from Marty Daniel of Daniel Defense. I've played them on the show, where Marty Daniel of Daniel Defense, he manufactures the AR-15. I've played video of him telling people how helpful Elise Stefanic's husband is in helping Daniel Defense find new markets to sell his AR-15s. Elise Stefanic's husband has worked tirelessly to block lawsuits that would hold gun manufacturers liable after a mass shooting. And he's also worked on Capitol Hill to block passage of an assault weapons ban. That would be the number 3 leader in the House, the Republican-controlled House, Elise Stefanic, New York Congresswoman and Harvard graduate. Elise Stefanic, who yesterday is demanding answers from the Secret Service. When is the Secret Service going to demand answers from Elise Stefanic's husband? When are the police chiefs and the police unions going to demand answers from Elise Stefanic's husband, Matthew Manda, the manager of public affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation based in Newtown, Connecticut? Why does Newtown, Connecticut sound so familiar? You saw the hundreds of police officers, too terrified to save those children in Uvalde 2 years ago. When is law enforcement going to stand up against these weapons? A witness to Sunday's shooting reportedly wrote down the make and license plate of the suspect's car as it drove away. Police reportedly arrested the suspect 45 miles from the attempted shooting. The Guardian reports this morning that the suspect was not armed when he was taken into custody. Again, no shots were fired at Donald Trump. The latest reports are that a Secret Service agent fired at someone pointing an assault rifle at the golf course where Trump was playing. Trump was back in Florida Sunday following 3 days of campaigning out west, a trip that included a fundraiser at the home of reality show producer Mark Burnett, creator of Survivor and, of course, Donald Trump's hit show The Apprentice. You're going to be hearing a lot about Mark Burnett this week. There's a new book coming out in 4 days about how Mark Burnett created Donald Trump's image. The musty, smelly rugs, the broken down offices at Trump Tower. Trump was broke, and Mark Burnett and his producers created the myth that Donald Trump had money. You're going to be hearing a lot about Mark Burnett this week, holding a fundraiser for Donald Trump, holding a fundraiser and probably holding on to those tapes where Donald Trump is allegedly using the N-word over and over again on the set of The Apprentice. That would be television producer Mark Burnett. Again, thankfully, no shots were fired at Trump because the Secret Service was able to fire at the shooter first. This now, the second time in 2 months that an attempt has been made on Donald Trump's life. The first back on July 14th, the second yesterday, September 15th. Trump told supporters late yesterday, quote, "I am safe and well and no one was hurt, but there are people in this world who will do whatever it takes to stop us," unquote. Speaker Mike Johnson was with the former president at Mar-a-Lago after the shots were fired, and then Speaker Johnson issued the following statement, quote, "No leader in American history has endured more attacks and remains so strong and resilient. He is unstoppable," unquote. No leader in American history has endured more attacks and remains so strong and resilient. I wonder what kind of videos Donald Trump has on Mike Johnson to make such a statement. And you see how they politicize these shootings. It's inappropriate to politicize a shooting, according to all these Republicans. First thing out of Mike Johnson's mouth, no leader in American history has endured more attacks and remained so strong and resilient. He is unstoppable. So it wasn't, the implication being, it wasn't an insane lunatic who tried to take a shot at Donald Trump. By making that statement, he's implicating the Democrats. The Guardian reports this morning that the FBI is about to make this a federal case since it involves an attempt on the life of a presidential candidate. But Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has ordered state police to conduct their own investigation. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says he wants to know how it was possible for a man with an assault weapon to get within 500 yards of Trump. Well, why don't you look in the mirror, Mussolini? You're the one, Ron DeSantis, who introduced legislation last year allowing Florida residents to carry fully loaded concealed weapons without a permit. But Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is going to burden his police with an investigation as if Ron DeSantis's police aren't busy enough harassing citizens who signed a petition to put a pro-choice referendum on the November ballot. Literally, he's got police knocking on doors right now, threatening voters. Did you sign this petition? Is this really you? What's going on in Florida? Ron DeSantis's election police have been arresting people, specifically black voters, who have been released from prison and who were falsely led to believe they could register to vote. It's a little confusing in Florida because there was a referendum 2 or 3 years ago where Florida voters said, if you did time, you should be allowed to vote. If you're free, you should be allowed to vote. There was confusion, and the Republicans, I've talked about this, overturned the will of the Florida voters by attaching fines to your voting rights, and black people, specifically black people, were getting arrested last year because they accidentally registered to vote. This is going on in Florida. So let me tell you something about Disney and Universal. Isn't NBC Universal? Don't they have a theme park down in Florida as well? This is the truth about Disney and NBC Universal and Hollywood liberals. If this were any other state, if this were any state other than Florida, people in Hollywood would be calling for a boycott of Florida. But Disney and Universal have their theme parks in Florida. So all the big Hollywood stars are too chicken shit to call for a boycott of Florida. Under any other circumstance, Hollywood, Barbra Streisand, would be calling for a boycott of Florida. It used to happen all the time. Hollywood stars would call for boycotts of states that outlawed same-sex marriage or made it impossible for black people to vote. Look at what's going on in Florida. There should have been a boycott called 2 years ago. Now, let me tell you about boycotts. They work. A few years ago, North Carolina passed the same exact bathroom law that Governor Ron DeSantis passed in Florida. It's a bathroom law that persecutes the LGBTQ community. And what happened to North Carolina was a boycott. Hollywood called for a boycott of North Carolina. And when the current governor, Democrat Roy Cooper, took office, the first thing he did was reverse the bathroom bill, even with the Republican State House. He said, this bathroom bill is bad for business. So there's no more bathroom bill in North Carolina because of a boycott. There is now a travel advisory for Florida issued by the NAACP. The NAACP says it is not safe for black people to travel to Florida. Google that, will you? There is now a travel advisory issued by the largest LGBTQ plus lobbying organization in America. It is not safe for the LGBTQ plus community to travel in Florida. Google that, will you? NAACP issues a travel advisory. The largest LGBTQ lobbying organization in America issues a travel advisory for Florida, and yet nobody calls for a boycott of Florida the way boycotts have been called in the past, as recently as, 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Georgia passed those restrictive voting laws, and Delta, which is headquartered in Florida, and Coca-Cola, which is headquartered in Florida, they had to speak out because of the boycott. They had to condemn the voting laws in Georgia because people called for a boycott of Georgia. Where is the boycott of Florida? It has become a fascist state under Ron DeSantis. And yes, voting is important. Everybody should register to vote in Florida. Voting is the most important thing you can do. But boycotts also work. Why is there no boycott of Florida? Because I can only assume Robert Iger, is that his name? The CEO of Disney? And is it Brian Roberts, the owner of NBC Universal? They have said, do not call for a boycott of Florida because our theme parks are in Florida. Why is there no boycott of Florida? I believe that is why. Okay, the suspect. Now, I don't like to focus on any suspects. As far as I'm concerned, when there's a shooting or a shooting attempt, I don't care who the shooter is. I blame the guns. The suspect is always the guns and the gun manufacturers, the NRA. Focusing on the shooter encourages other shooters. Saying his name causes copycats. It gives them what they want. And by reporting on the shooter, it implies that the motive matters. It's pretty much like rape or spousal abuse. Who cares why somebody commits an act of rape or hits their significant other? By making the story about the shooter and turning him into the monster, and Chris LaCivita, Donald Trump's campaign spokesperson, already is calling the suspect, a monster, right? You have the monster now. It's not Marty Daniel of Daniel Defense. It's not Matthew Manda, the big gun lobbyist married to Elise Stefanic. It's not the National Rifle Association. It's not the Republicans who won't renew the assault weapons ban. They isolate this down to one monster. I don't care who the suspect is. Focusing on the shooter implies there's a way to get to the bottom of all this through any other avenue besides confronting Florida's lax gun laws. Florida has some of the laxest gun laws in America. I don't care who the suspect is. Lock him up, put him away for life. I don't care who he is. There'll be another one tomorrow. There's going to be a mass shoot. We have one or two mass shootings every day in America. That being said, the identity of the suspect is about to be politicized because of his alleged ties to the war in Ukraine. By the end of today, you will be hearing the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party spouting conspiracy theories about how Sunday's failed assassination attempt was caused somehow by America's support for Ukraine in its war against Russia. There are some reports that the suspect fought in Ukraine on behalf of the Ukrainians, but there's no evidence to suggest that he actually fought in Ukraine. I'll get to that. Joe Biden has specifically refused to send or authorize any American civilians to go fight in Ukraine, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the suspect never fought in Ukraine. He did spend 5 to 6 months there recently, as last year. You are about to be lied to. You're about to be told that he fought on the side of the Ukrainians, and the pro-Putin wing of the GOP, along with tens of thousands of Russian trolls, they will use this information to undermine American support for Ukraine. So here is what we know about this suspect. I'm not going to say his name. He was arrested on Sunday, 45 miles from where Trump was playing golf. Again, in America, you are innocent until proven guilty, which means you shouldn't automatically assume the suspect is the person who the Secret Service agent shot at. Police often arrest the wrong people, especially in Florida. Police identify the suspect as a 58-year-old white male from Greensboro, North Carolina, who may originally have been from Hawaii or fled to Hawaii while he was wanted for crimes he had committed 15 to 18 years ago. The suspect is believed to have been a roofing contractor, but he gave up the roofing business, according to some reports, to travel to Ukraine right after the Russian invasion. According to an article in the New York Times from last year, Ukraine has been flooded with thousands of foreign fighters, many of them Americans with absolutely no military experience, men who would never be allowed inside the United States Army. They would be rejected by our Army. According to that New York Times article from a year ago, many of these Americans going over to Ukraine to fight with the Ukrainians, they are hurting the Ukrainian war effort. They are undisciplined, they fight amongst themselves, and lie about their accomplishments. The Times says many of them are guilty of stolen valor, claiming to have been in battles against Russians that they never actually fought in. In that article from last year, one of the Americans interviewed is the suspect who went to Ukraine and was interviewed by the New York Times. And he doesn't seem to have done any actual fighting in Ukraine. That is according to reporting in the New York Times, as well as Semaphor and Axios. So he was in Ukraine. He identified himself to the New York Times last year as a civilian who spent most of his time in Ukraine recruiting Americans, as well as former soldiers who fought in Afghanistan, urging them to come to Ukraine and fight the Russians. Thomas Gibbons Neff from the New York Times reports this morning that he interviewed the suspect a year ago and described him as, quote unquote, suspicious and clearly in over his head. You might be hearing today that the suspect fought in Ukraine. You're going to be hearing that. But according to the Times and other sources, he went to Ukraine but saw no military action and was there essentially as an American cheerleader trying to recruit actual soldiers. Now, maybe we will learn something new later today, but according to several reliable sources, the suspect saw no fighting in Ukraine. He was there recruiting American fighters. Why am I talking about this? Because you're about to be inundated with a large swath of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories designed to portray the suspect as part of the deep, dark state who wants the war in Ukraine to continue. And of course, you know where that leads to. Donald Trump wants to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. So I don't need to articulate the rest of that song for you. I don't need to sing that song. You know where this conspiracy theory is heading into the election. Tanya Lukanova and Ben Smith reporting over at Semaphor this morning. Right, that Semaphor spoke with the suspect last year about his efforts to recruit American fighters, trying to recruit men, I guess some women, to come to Ukraine and fight the Russian invasion. The suspect told Semaphor a year ago that Ukraine had been too selective about allowing foreigners to fight with and for them. He complained that most of the foreign fighters who came to Ukraine lasted but a week and then went home because the Ukrainian military doesn't respect or appreciate them. The suspect told Semaphor last year that the Ukrainian military automatically assumes all foreign volunteers are Russian spies. Semaphor reports that the suspect founded a group called International Volunteer Center and raised money to encourage Americans to go fight for Ukraine. Semaphor describes him as, quote unquote, frantic and, quote unquote, a bit over the top. Semaphor says the suspect told them he spent 5 months in Ukraine and then came back to America. The suspect, according to Semaphor, eventually redirected his frustration that he felt for the Zelensky government. He redirected it and began pointing his frustration at Washington, D.C. for not encouraging American civilians to go fight in Ukraine. According to the New York Times, the suspect last year was setting up meetings with members of Congress to see if they would somehow encourage Americans to fight in Ukraine. But the Times said it has no idea if those meetings ever took place. I am telling you this because these are reliable sources and facts. But by the time you hear this, many of you, I have no doubt, will have been subjected to an entirely different story about this suspect, a story spun by the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party and the tens of thousands of Russian trolls, a story that somehow convinces low-information Republican voters as though they're any other kind, a story that the suspect was driven to madness because of America's support for Ukraine, or even worse than being driven to madness, driven to do something that I don't want to articulate, but you know where this conspiracy is heading. Now, I didn't want to talk about this today. I wanted to talk about how J.D. Vance admitted on Sunday that, yes, I'm lying about Haitians eating cats and dogs, but I did it for a noble cause. You're going to be subjected to a lot of lies about what happened in Florida on Sunday for a noble cause. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. This has been the mop-up for September 16th, 2024. I've been David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. If you enjoyed any of this, please share it. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. The best way to help me is to share this episode, especially. You're going to be inundated with misinformation today, so you might want to share this. And subscribe to my channel and my newsletter. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping things civil. And thank you to the Secret Service once again for keeping Donald Trump safe. This could have been a really bad day. We got to get rid of the guns. We got to get rid of the guns. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm doing shows at 2:30 a.m., more and more shows at 2:30 a.m. Eastern. So thank you for listening to me.